We
Okay.
we have the soldier, the doctor, and the refugee, and the immigrant as well. And we have a good roster, I guess, from different experiences. And I guess may the soldier begin.
Sure. Okay. So this lecture, guys, is going to be about the reality of death and how exactly we cope with loss. In my personal experience, I've seen quite a bit of death. Um, I've been I've been to like a whole sort of like, I guess you could say, selection of witnessing death, and it's definitely like a different experience, something that like you can't really, I wouldn't really say I'm proud of it. It's an experience that's definitely built a lot of perspective in my life, and it's just like helped me just understand just how sort of like fragile and just how mortal we are, because we are all mortals, right? So what I wanted to highlight was that on the topic, there's like a certain sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? There's like a certain fascination I think that human beings have with death, and it's it's something that, while it's very natural, it's very human to feel that way. I think there's also like a level of understanding that needs to be brought to people's attention. There needs to be a certain level of awareness, because from my standpoint, whenever people have asked me about death, it's usually in this form, this context, which is people find out I'm in the military, and then they say, "Hey, man, have you ever killed anyone?" And I can understand why people would think that, because I've served in the military. I've been part of a subgroup of the population that has been in a form of employment where death is kind of like part of the business, or is potentially a part of the business. But I find that question particularly triggering, mainly because a few instances where I've seen people die, it's not been of natural causes. It's been relatively traumatic, and whenever I find myself in that situation and I talk about that, I find myself almost reliving it, like I'm there again. You know, I'll just give you guys a one example. I'm not going to disclose the details of the individual or anything like that. But I remember like once I was working as part of an ambulance crew in London, and we got called to a young child, 2-year-old child, who's suffering from a respiratory illness called croup. You guys can look into that if you want. Just search it up on Google, and it'll tell you the whole list of it. Um, it's yeah, it was pretty like pretty messed up, because by the time we got there, this kid was basically like ice blue, right? Which doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that they have got very low oxygen levels. And it was a very young couple who were the parents. You know, it's it's nerve wracking, right? Because from a professional point of view, from a professional standpoint, we had to then do our best to bring them back. Bring this kid back and resuscitate, but it was too late. And so I remember I was the one who actually had to deliver the news. And at the time, I think at the time I was like maybe 24, 25. And this couple, they were young. They were really young. They were probably about 26 or so, no older than. And I had to explain to them, just what exactly happened. And yeah, I mean, they naturally they just crumbled. They just broke down. Now, that was already traumatizing for them. For me, I think the biggest thing that I remember taking away from that is I just wish that we got there sooner. Even though, it's almost like that savior complex, especially when you're on the other side, when you're trying to basically, like combat death. And whatever your belief system is, whether you're religious, spiritual, you believe that, when it's your time, it's your time. Or if you're a person of science, you just think that, well, okay, this person was devoid of oxygen for, you know, circa 7 minutes, which is already too much time. I think when you're like past 2 minutes of like 0% oxygen going to your body, you're basically, that's when like your brain essentially starts vegetating, right? I mean, John, you could probably shed like more accurate information on this afterwards.
Yeah, takes about a minute and a half. Once you hit 2 minutes, you start getting permanent brain damage.
Yeah. So 7 minutes for a 2-year-old child. Bearing in mind, this is a 2-year-old child. This is a toddler. So they haven't even fully developed yet. So those numbers are probably even shorter. But the simple fact remains that we're looking at 7 minutes pushing. They were gone, right? And I remember like sat in the back of the ambo with my team leader. We're just looking at each other and we're just like, well, like, what the fuck do I say? This is like there's no easy way to cut this, right? And you can't exactly like have this whole cookie cutter mentality or attitude towards it, because this is a human life that's just gone. And even though we get like a pamphlet on bereavement and it's all like, oh, console them and reassure them and all this other bollocks that means fuck all. Because yeah, exactly. You like just look at what's happening in Ukraine right now. We can say, oh yeah, stay strong, guys, and show moral support and everything, but it doesn't change the fact that people have lost their lives. People have lost their family members. People from both sides. From both sides. Some of them are actually invading areas where they have known relatives. Imagine how that makes them feel. So the point that I'm trying to illustrate here is, you've got to be so careful about about understanding, or about like what you say, specifically when it comes to a topic like that, because it is very, very touchy. And yeah, like Jomat just said, I actually made a video about my experience, and I kind of go deeper into it. I go much deeper in, and I explain just what it does to me every time someone says, hey, so have you ever killed someone? Like, another, there's two sides to it, right? So yeah, there is someone who asks because they've never been faced with the reality of witnessing death by non-natural causes. No, I get that. But then there's also a level of ignorance that also comes from certain people. So this example, I remember I was out with a couple of my mates in town, and we spoke to a few girls, and one girl was like, oh yeah, so you're in the army? I was like, yeah, cool. And the first thing she asks is, oh yeah, so have you killed anyone? And it's almost like her eyes lit up when she was talking to me about this whole like fantasy that she was sort of playing out in her head. And I just thought to myself, in hindsight, like, really, that's the first thing you're going to ask somebody who's like served in the forces or in the public services? Exactly. It was pretty fucking dark. That's the first question you're going to ask. I mean, not to sound cliche or cheesy, but like, not even oh hey, like, proud of you guys, thank you for your service, etc. Which I get more of now, but it's like, I don't really care about that. It's just the simple fact that someone, like one human, would say to another person in such a way, to such a degree, that they're so keen to understand on, hey, have you killed anybody? Please tell me what it's like. I really want to know. It's like, first of all, why would you ask such a thing? Because every single one of us, in some shape or form, has either seen it or witnessed it, right? We've either like first-handedly, second-handedly witnessed or heard about someone who's passed on, and we know someone who's had to deal with the grieving process. And yeah, like, this is why this whole thing is this is the reason why this whole lecture is taking place, man, because I just want to raise awareness, and the other guys will talk and give their own personal anecdotes about it. But yeah, exactly. And especially when it comes to the military setting, I think there are a lot of people who do sort of think that it's like it's depicted in video games and movies. Like, it's not like Hollywood, man. It's not like it's not like the typical like someone gets like blown up or shot or something, and then we all just carry on because, oh yeah, well, that's just one more kill on the leaderboard for the other team. That's a human being with their own personal thoughts and their feelings. That's somebody's brother or someone's sister. That's someone's son or daughter. That's a father or a mother, right? And when you put all those things into perspective, you see like how connected we actually are as humans. And naturally following human biology, we are not supposed to be witnessing death. As our primitive biological coding dictates, we are a species whose sole purpose, if you cut everything away, you cut all the social and parasocial norms of life away, our sole purpose is to ensure the survival of our species. So when we see another member of the tribe die, because that's what we are, like of all 8 billion people on the planet, we are just one big tribe, okay? When we witness mass death, like what's happening in Ukraine right now, when we see this happening on the news, subconsciously, even though we may not know it, subconsciously it's dampening on our emotions, and it's weighing heavy because we're seeing death of our fellow humans. So when someone asks, hey, so what's it like? It's pretty insensitive, and it just reminds you of like losing a member of the tribe. And yeah, exactly, it is due to morbid curiosity. Now, there are ways to go about it, but asking in such a belligerent and insensitive way is definitely not the way that I personally would, especially when you're talking to a member of society who's been involved with the whole ongoings of death, etc. Like me personally, being a soldier and witnessing this war right now. Excuse me, getting a bit choked up. Sorry, guys. Me witnessing this has really like taken a toll on my mental. Yeah, it's just sad, man. Because like as a medic, it's just it's pretty fucked. But yeah,
There isn't
that's it.
really an escape out of it either.
Nah.
It's just like you have to look forward. You can't really constantly think about it. As soon as you bring it up, you will just either crumble or you just fall into tears. I mean, from where I'm from, I'm from Syria, and when I was 9 years old in 2011, that was when my my dad was actually taken away from our home, not directly from our home, but he was actually chased, as we heard later from his friends, that he was chased in his car, and later on he crashed it, and they captured him. The significance of it was not actually that he got captured, but the fact that they actually kept a search on for him, and they came into our house, and they literally just threw me out of bed. Searched up everything, tried to, in the name of looking for my dad, even though they already captured him. But it was kind of an insult, insult to injury already, just to demolish anything that's there of his existence, essentially, and to try to strip us away from anything that we have of him. They confiscated a lot of the things that we had. They were like, "You're banned. You will find him, and when he's with us, he will go through hell." And they didn't really give a fuck what they had to say about him, and we really couldn't reply on anything that was said. It's like the same thing that's happening with Russia and Ukraine right now. The Russian military just simply does not give a fuck. And the most insensitive part about it is, like, when you read about the stories and the news as well from the war that's currently ongoing, you just hear them, all right, the Russian military has brutalized this and this and that, has committed war crimes, and is threatening with this and this and that. And they didn't even have the audacity to call it a war that they're declaring on Ukraine. They called it a special military operation. So when that is being said, and when you hear that on the news, and then when the allies, and when America and NATO, whatever it is, when they try to respond, the Russian military's response, or the Russian government, is allies are being unfriendly. it's kind of saying like, go fuck yourselves. This is our rule, and this is what we're gonna do. So stop being unfriendly and just take it. Essentially, that's what happened even in my country and where I'm from. And it's not really, it's not really something that I'd like to think about all the time. You know, if I'm being honest, it's just something that when you hear about, and you know, it reminds you of, or when you want to talk about it. I've never really mentioned my dad once, and even right now as we speak, I'm trying to not overthink it. I've never really mentioned my dad once without a tear or me struggling to speak afterwards, and already experienced it as we speak. It's just something that you experience and suffer from as things go on, but you don't really present to people. People just think that you're living a normal life. And I didn't really know that my dad was killed or brutalized or tortured until 3 years after his capture, when we had fled the country. And on the way out of our fleeing, we actually were on the border and we tried to leave the country legally, as most people would. They the border control, they were like, we really need to see the father figure in this family, otherwise we're not going to let you through. And when we said we don't know where the father figure is, they took us in for questioning. And I just remember that my mom told me, and she was there with my uncle at that point. I just remember that my mom told me that when the officer had asked her where's my dad, and she told him that she doesn't know where he's about, or where's whereabouts are. He had replied to her with this quoting: "I will look for him, and hopefully I will help him get out from where he is, because he needs to get out of his hiding hole to protect his family." And then, you know, he said that all that like this sensational, oh, you know, we're with you kind of talk. And then she told me that 30 minutes afterwards he came back, and they, you know, they made some sort of calls, some connections, whatever, and they had found my dad was actually captured in one of their prisons. And when he came back to my mom, he told her that you have 5 minutes to get out of the fucking get out of his office, because my dad is in fucking hell, and he will throw her in jail as well if he doesn't get the fuck out of there. And I just remember after that incident, and the reason why I know it's true and why it happened is because I remember I was outside of the building where my mom and my uncle were being questioned. I just remember seeing my mom running outside, my uncle, as if they were chased by rabid dogs. And at that point, something was wrong, and we knew something had to be done. And we just kept running. All of us, we had all our bags, everything, all our stuff, and you can just hear them getting kind of prepared, and you can look at the officer as he get out of the building that he was prepared, and he was saying something about us, and he was pointing at us from a distance. And luckily, we had actually managed to get away in time, and you know, we had managed to get in a taxi to drive away at least 5 minutes from the location. But to summarize really what was happening there, you know, and what's happening right now in Ukraine and Russia, it's kind of a similar thing, you know. It's a brutal regime. It's kind of a bully, you know. It's like your school kind of bully. And the fact that people just see it as numbers, you know, the fact that people just see it as, okay, these people are just dying and this is the cause of war, you know, it's kind of an immoral response to how everything is going on, you know. Even when George Floyd was killed, you know, it's like the guy may have not been the best role model for everyone in this world that we live in. You know, he was a porn actor, or he was this or that. You know, some religious beliefs that do not really connect. But the fact that people would make jokes and, you know, memes out of his death, it's kind of a brutal sensation, because I have myself lost a dad, you know, and he is a dad to a daughter. In the sense that my dad was brutally tortured, apparently sent to the hospital after he would pass out, apparently healed up again, only to get tortured again. And the fact that people are now making fun of it, and it's just and asking, okay, well, how did your dad die, or, you know, what happened? And people act like, oh, they care and all that kind of stuff, but they really just don't see it. You know, they don't really feel it. They don't really understand it. And it's kind of a reoccurring thing. It's understandable, you know, people die. That's natural causes. Some people don't die from natural causes. Some people are just unfortunate. But in all these scenarios, we have just come to learn one thing out of all of it. We just have to blind ourselves from looking at it. We just gotta not look at it directly, because as soon as we face it, we all break down, and that's what makes everyone. That's what makes like brutal leaders so brutal. Is because they have trained themselves mentally to look past the fact, and this is why psychopaths are the way they are. They obviously have mental sickness, but their mentality and everything, they just don't give a fuck. They just don't give a fuck. And I understand where you're coming from, Sravan, when people ask you, like, have you killed someone, or have you seen someone die, or then how that could be triggering, because it is in the same scenario as how it happened to me when I was in Jordan, actually, because that's where the country that I fled to. A lot of the Jordanian kids there were kind of interested. They were fascinated. Oh, did someone kill your dad? Who killed your dad? And they were fucking bullies. They were fucking bullies. They didn't give a fuck. But like, they're just asking these repetitive questions, and everyone was so fucking disturbing. Even the teachers would just fucking hit us. They would actually physically hit us. Everything that we did, and then as soon as I mentioned them, oh, my dad has passed away, some of the teachers would actually become nicer. They would use, oh shit, no, sorry, we feel bad, but it's like, why would you treat me any different now? That I told you my dad is dead.
Yeah.
Why would you different?
Oh man,
It's
it's like
I'm
reverse
not
preferential
kidding,
treatment.
exactly. I've been going on for too long. My bad words, but it's just a lot of
No
connections
man,
that I've been making.
no, say your piece, man. I mean, I rambled like fucking crazy trying to get to my point, just reliving that emotional whirlwind, and I didn't realize that was going to happen. So sorry, guys. I'm not as collected as I normally am, but yeah, Luther, man, say your bit, man. Just say what you need to say, bro.
Like, it ain't about what has happened. It's about the response
Mm,
that come out of it. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's like, if my dad was just honored, and my dad was just killed, just even if he was just shot in the middle of the street by a random, I don't know, a random shot. I don't know. Someone fired a shot and landed at my dad, and maybe he was a bystander. Maybe he wasn't meant to be shot. But the fact that the response came out of it with he's being tortured, he's in hell, fuck yourselves, oh, how did your dad die, and all the aftermath of everything, and that's why it's like, for something that I've been closing up on a lot myself, actually. Like, I usually don't tell people that my dad is dead. Like, people just expect me to be this like normal fucking guy. How's your parents? How's everything? How's your dad? What does your dad work? And I'm like, yeah, my dad works this. Yeah, okay. And they're like, all right, that's amazing, man. But on the other hand, when I tell people, oh, my dad is dead, they're like, oh, really? How did he die? Like, what happened? Oh, that's unfortunate. It's like, some of them are actually genuine. Some of them are just, you can just tell, they have other interests in the topic. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like you said, it's not so much of the excuse me. It's not so much of the fact that things happened. It's the way in which things are said, right? Um,
Mm.
like like what teachers would say, it's not so much what was said, it's how it was said, right? And in this case, I mean, yeah, it is quite it's quite an emotional. It's a very emotional. It's emotionally. It's like a very emotionally triggering and like a very emotionally charged scenario, right? Because because one thing is like, ignorance is not bliss in this situation. Ignorance can get you out of a lot of things, but when it comes to really really like covering that whole topic and then getting someone to move, like relive that situation, and then to just so you can have your own, like, curiosity scratched. um it's yeah, in my book anyways, there's no excuse for that. You can't, you
Yeah.
can't and shouldn't
Like,
be that way.
it's one of those things that, I 'cause when I remember, like, until this day. I remember when I first heard that my dad was, captured, and we don't know where his whereabouts are. I just remember, as a 9-year old would, we just fall down, fucking tear up, like tried to call his phone in like the olden days Nokia's. What I mean? We're talking about 2011 kind of shit, guy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the desperation, and then like when I'm there in Jordan, I remember like after 3 years of the whole fucking incident, I'm there in Jordan. I'm just like thinking, I hear like my cousin has been killed, or my someone that my was a friend to my brother was actually trying to save. He was in like free military or whatever it's called, like the
Yeah.
Revolution Army, and like he apparently was trying to drive a car that was there was like a bomb planted in the car or something. It was trapped, and it was meant to target civilians. And he apparently got in that car because they couldn't really defuse it or whatever it is. They
Yeah.
couldn't really break it down because no one's like a bomb expert in that country. You know what I mean? So as soon as he drove it off, like 10, 15 meters from the location, it just blew up in him, and it sent him to pieces. And like the picturing the idea itself, hearing someone that you knew, someone that you used to like, you would buy you like candy, snacks, whatever, like as a kid, and like would meet up with him, you're talking to him, and then like you just hear that blown up to literal fucking pieces, you know.
Yeah.
That fucking that is not even that's worse than someone just dying and get shot. At least you have some sort of body, something to bury. You know what I mean? But then just to hear that, now he's just into pieces. These pieces of meat, and like, I couldn't bring myself to eat like chicken strips or anything meat, beef, anything like that. Because I every time like I see a cut of meat, I'm like, man, this is a piece of meat that could have like same thing that could have came out of his body when he blew up. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, yeah, exactly. Because I mean, we're all we're all just made up of blood, bone, tissue. At the core elements, and like it goes beyond that, right? Because on surface level, that's all we see. We're just like another human, another person, right? Like another meat sack, right? But then
Exactly.
within that is a consciousness and a personality that was tied to that, and that's what we connect to, right? So
Mm.
when you see that, you hear about those things, it's like this person, this consciousness that I was once so familiar with has now literally just been either obliterated or is just no more. And that alone, just the thought of that alone is just it's just gonna weigh heavily on your mind. But fuck, man, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, man.
horrible. John, Trip, you guys there?
Um, alhamdulillah, Trump.
I'm here. I don't know. What would you like me to speak on? I mean, I can speak on um the first time that I willingly saw a dead body in college. Um, it was in a cadaver lab, so I had signed up for it. So I had signed up to see it. It was someone who donated their body to science. If you guys don't know what that is, then basically students dissect it to learn human anatomy. Um, but yeah, I think it was a surreal feeling, you know what I'm saying? It was just a cold body, it was kinda lifeless, very pale skin, and of course they preserved it, um, but honestly, like, once I was an undergrad, we weren't allowed to, like, actually touch them until we actually had, I think, 3 or 4 months into the class because a lot of people it was a hard class, so, like, for human anatomy, um, they would actually dissect it for us and show us because they actually knew what they were doing. Um, but yeah, so for myself, I we're gonna fast forward from undergrad. We're gonna go to actual like COVID when the pandemic hit. I was working on the front lines from about March till about I would say September, and it was a very depressing time. Um, it's very just Uh, it's like a mind game, you know what I'm saying? Just being around people, because I mean, when the pandemic first hit, I remember I think everyone knew where they were at. for myself, I was literally the week before the pandemic hit, I was in a mission trip in Puerto Rico. Me and a few other med students were in Puerto Rico, and we were, providing care for people in San Juan. And basically, for myself, it was very hard to be dealt with the fact that, the first month and a half, we didn't know what this virus was, as well as, other scientists that were studying it like 100% of the time trying to develop a vaccine. So, we had, I mean, I was telling Sovereign that, me and another student, he's also Arabic, we looked at each other, we would just say like, inshallah, you know what I'm saying? Like if
Yeah.
God will allow it, it'll happen. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of these people we didn't know what to do because we were trying to protect ourselves. You know what I'm saying? Because if we had gotten it as well, we didn't know what was going to happen to us. So we had to. It was back when we were wearing double, triple masks. Um, and seeing people just pass away in the ICU. And it was very sad because like after I think the first month, family members weren't even allowed to see people if they had contracted COVID. So people were just dying alone. And yeah, it was it was just a very depressing time for me. That 5 months I was probably the most depressed in my entire life.
Sure.
Just seeing, person and it was just sad because, we'd send a lot of these people donated their bodies to science, but because they had COVID, the bodies couldn't have been used, so they basically just got tossed, which is very sad to see. Um, but yeah, like a lot of people, like it was hard because a lot of families wanted to bury their loved ones, but with COVID, it's like, it was hard. I mean, I'm not gonna get into the nitty-gritty of it. But yeah, like for I think a few months, like people that had passed away from COVID weren't actually given proper burial services, like with their entire family. It was very sad. It was very, very sad. Um, and it was just, it was an unprecedented time. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know. It just I'm just getting, I'm just feeling sad just talking about it. But yeah, there were times where like, I would go into the locker room, or the on-call room, and I would literally just take all my masks off and I would just start crying.
Yeah, man.
I didn't know what to do. You know what I'm saying? Because like I had people pass away in my life, like people close to me, like grandparents. Um, but yeah, for myself, it's like taking care of people and not knowing what to do to help them. Like you just went through, I went through all this schooling, all this testing, everything, just to not know, when a new disease happens and we don't have a vaccine, we haven't studied it. It was it was scary. It was a scary time because like a lot of people, like Kermit said, there's a lot of people who don't believe in COVID, or there's people that don't wear masks, and there's people that think that it's all fake, and it's like they end up in the ICU and then they're begging for us to help them, and we're doing what we can do. You know what I'm saying? Like the whole point of quarantining and just not going out, the whole thing was basically just, preventative medicine. We're just prevent yourself from contracting the virus. It's hard. I mean, of course, the virus is an airborne virus, so, it's not impossible to catch, especially you could literally be inside your home for 6 months. You go out for 7 minutes and you could catch it. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so I think that, for myself, all the times I called time of deaths, it just got sadder and sadder, you know what I'm saying? So, I'd call like a time of death 1643, time of death 2142, you know what I'm saying? All the way, like just all times. I could probably tell you, I probably called, I think, like 16 in a single day at one point, once we hit our top ones. And it's very sad. It's very, very sad. And, you know, stuff like that is what kind of builds you up and kind of strengthens your heart because for me I'm a very empathetic person and sympathetic, and going into a field like this you have to understand that people will die on your watch, on your clock. And a lot of the times there are things that you can do everything you can do and it still not be enough. And you have to accept the fact that no matter what, you still have to go on about your day, like you have to go on to the next person and the next person and the next person. But for me it's like it's hard, and it's still hard to this day, man. But yeah, that's really all I have to. If anyone else has any questions, or yeah,
Yeah, we can. I don't know. Maybe we leave the Q&A segment out of this one, or hold it to the end because we also need to um get to how we've coped with it. Fuck, I don't even know if I'm gonna make it to that right now, man, because I'm feeling this shit. But yeah, we will. Yeah, bro, I feel you though, because um, I did the same thing. You know, I did the same thing. Like I was on wards, and people. One thing that blew my mind was like people were saying, "Oh, it's fake." Like all the conspiracy theories were coming out, and you have like we called them like just like the fucking ignoramuses out there who just had no clue. Yeah, Jingle, I'm good, man, thanks. They had no clue. They had absolutely no clue. It's just the people who just sit behind their screens and will just click clack away. But then when it happens to this is what I've realized about humanity as well. Everybody is so quick to be ignorant and think that it won't ever happen to them until it happens to them or somebody that's close to them. And then all of a sudden, they become like the fucking flag bearers for that situation. And that's with anything. That's like COVID, war, famine, you name it, right? And I think like on a wider spectrum, this lecture, like the objective of this lecture needs to just be to spread more empathy and compassion for our fellow man, because yeah, like John, is very real. It's very real. Like I worked on wards too, and I thought there's no way in hell that people can think this is fake. You know what I mean? When people are literally like dropping like flies, like moths to a flame, like literally. The first wave was the worst because we had no idea how to sort of combat it. Right? There was no like treatment that worked, and people would see this, like the news would report it. Despite the fact that the news does like to focus and sensationalize a lot of negative stuff or what they want the masses to see. But so many people would be sitting there and just think, well, it will never happen to me, except when it does. And then that just goes back to the whole question of curiosity. Trip, man, what about you? If you're happy
The
to
thing
share
is,
your insight.
I didn't go to like. I was a kid. I was a very young kid,
Yeah.
Like nothing happened to my family and shit, But I saw people getting killed. Like I saw a woman get fucking hit by a car, and I saw people getting shot. I saw people getting shot here in Sweden too. And I think it was like a year before I met Luther. I saw a guy in our city getting killed in the middle of the center, and I just saw it. I was like 20 meters away, and like
Was he the guy that got stabbed?
uh, no, it's. I think it's no, I didn't tell you. The place where we used to live, like with you,
Mm.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, right there. Yeah,
Why you're
uh,
surprised?
the store, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I probably didn't affect me as much because I went through like the same scenario before, and I was like, damn, he's dead. Cool. And that's how I like maybe because like didn't scar me as much because like I didn't like none of my family was in any problem like none of my family was killed. I didn't experience like family loss or maybe that's why. But yeah, I mean like I don't think like it affected me as bad as you guys because you guys went through some traumatic shit. Uh,
It's also because you got the skids, bro. Like
uh
you, I never seen you cry.
oh
Like Trip,
yeah,
Trip,
I
you
never.
you've been through some fucking trauma, my guy. You've been through some. It's not related to death, maybe, but you've been through some fucked up trauma, and this is why for Trip, like if so people don't misunderstand and think that he just doesn't give a fuck. It's more of the traumatic experiences that he's been through his childhood
Yeah.
that has made him so incapable of feeling these kind of emotions. It's not like he's a psychopath or just go out and kill someone with cold blood. It's just the fact that he just doesn't feel those emotions that we feel. But he has definitely witnessed a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean like the reason for that is when I was in Serbia. I'm from Serbia, by the way. Like there was a lot of abuse, like physical abuse, mental abuse. So like nothing right now can like get even close to the shit that like I've been through Syria. So like everything like right now feels like yeah, like 10% of like what I was feeling when I was younger. So like I used to I used to like almost getting stabbed like fucking uh like a lot of things. I don't want to get into it right now, but like obviously like that will have affected me. So yeah,
Yeah, man. And I just want to give that like um little addition, just following on to what Luther said. The trip, because I speak to him like almost every single day, right? Exactly, like he has been through some shit. And like I just want to say to you, bro, like it doesn't matter, you know, what your occupation was, where you've come from. Uh, trauma's trauma, man. We all, you know, we all experience it and deal with it in different ways. Again, to reinforce the whole like point of this lecture, the message is clear. You know, show a sense of care, compassion, and empathy when we're talking to people. Because just because someone may come across as lifeless, I mean, even then, that's more of a reason to show some concern, because what's got them to that point, you know? With Tripp specifically, I mean, he's been through a lot, and I can tell you one thing for sure: this guy has got the biggest fucking heart that I've ever seen on a person. Right now, he may not see it that way, but that's because of his own conditioning. Just the same way to the way that John would just like call TOD and then just press on, right? Which I think will like very like nicely lead us into the next stage of this lecture, which is how do we cope with death. I think let's take it from the top. So Luther, how do you cope with how did you cope, man? you know
um, well, I guess to really begin with, it's
or rather, how do we
uh,
deal with that? Sorry, I want to say let's change it. How do you deal with it? Because I feel like the word cope, and especially in today's day and age, especially amongst the certain communities out there, cope is used as like a word to symbolize weakness. This isn't weakness. This is a strategy
no.
you employ to ensure your survival. So how would you deal with death, rather? Yeah.
Well, I mean, to begin with, it varies from death to death. It's understandable that like losing a family member is sometimes can be less fucked up or more fucked up than losing a friend. Losing a lover, whatever it is that you might have lost in your life. But the way I deal with losing a family member is by first of all not thinking about it so much, not thinking about the not the fact that I don't think about my dad. It's just the fact that I don't speak about it. I remember like I would be walking down the street someday and I'd see someone walking with their son, and I would remember like the days that like in the early mornings where I would not sleep in the summer, and I would wait until my dad wakes up and so we can go to my uncle's store and we can buy a lot of candy because it's summer. I mean, you just want to have fun. And I used to remember, I reminisce about all these good days, and I never really like to speak about it. It's just talking about it. I feel like a lot of therapists say, okay, talk about it, get it out of your system, get it out of your system. And the thing is, yes, you could talk about it to some people. You could go through that phase. But I've felt always more kind of not satisfied. That's not the right word to say, but more of content with my life and with the loss of life when I didn't speak about it, but rather think about it and try to work to be the person that my dad would have liked me to be, kind of sense. You know what I mean? Because when your parents are here and are like they can expect you to be like this and that, like that. I'm just my main goal is like the way I deal with it is just trying to be something that if my dad was alive, he would be proud of, and that is my main way of dealing with it. Just trying my hardest, even when I slip up and even when I feel like right now I'm going through a hard time, concentrating on my work, concentrating on my studying, all these kind of things. But I always try to remember, if in this situation would my dad have done this, in this situation would my dad wanted me to be like this, and just try to see, okay, this is what my dad would have wanted you to do, or this is what your mom would have wanted you to do, this is what would have happened, in this case, in that case. But also remember that your dad, your mom, your lover, whoever it is that you've lost. I keep saying dad because it's the closest thing to me. That's what I think about when I think about death. They would also understand if you would move on to a life that they may not accept you to live, in a sense. And I'm not saying a life of misery. I'm not saying that no one wants that for the people that they love. If I die someday, I don't want my friends or my family, to suffer. Um, what I have expectations of my family, what I have expectations of my friends, maybe they will not reach it. Maybe they live another type of life. But as long as they're living a happy life, that's fine. As long as they move on to something different, it's fine for me. It's easy to see to say that right now. After kind of experiencing the people who have actually lost other members, other like cousins, friends, and so on. It would just be all right. My dad wanted me to be like this, but I ended up being like that. My friend wanted me to be the strongest guy in the gym, like let's say with him, but I ended up just becoming a really smart student in school instead. So that's how I deal with it mainly. I just think would my dad want me to be like this? And every time I'd fail in that, I'd actually fucking tear my fucking ass off. Every time I think, what? I failed in the situation. My dad would have not wanted me, and I just cry. And like right now, I'm thinking about all the situations where I failed, and that makes me fucking sad. But there is really no way to just eliminate that feeling completely. Just use it as your driver, Just use it as something that motivates you to move forward in life, and then that's what I do. I know that if I become a successful person in my life, then my dad would be proud, and that's what I want my dad to see if he's watching over me, if you believe in religion, if you believe in the afterlife, whatever it is that you want to believe in. So yeah, man, that is that's how I deal with it.
Appreciate it, man. Um,
Uh, if
John?
anyone has any other questions, you can go forward with it for
Yeah.
for me and the boys.
Yeah, I feel like there are some people who might have some genuine questions, so we might have a Q&A segment at the end of this, see how everyone's feeling. John,
Okay.
you there, bro?
I'm here. Yeah, I'm here.
How do you, as a as a man of science, as a man of medicine, um, from a doctor's perspective, I suppose, or just whatever your whole sort of take on it is, how do you sort of deal with it? What's your strategy, bro?
I think for myself, like I said, even if you do become a physician or a nurse or whatever you want to be in the medical field, can't it's gonna take time. It's taken me time. I'd say I'm a lot better now than I was maybe a few years ago. Um, but for myself, it's hard to lose that feeling of sympathy and empathy,
Mm.
especially because the first time you ever lose someone on your clock and you have to call the TOD, it's very very emotional. You know what I'm saying? Because just the way that hospitals are built in the U.S., it's like they're always built to withstand capacity. So, you have to go on to the next patient. You can't just sit and, mourn. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because they said if you sat and mourned on every single patient, you'd only be able to go through 3 or 4 patients a day. Um, it's hard, especially when, you get close to a patient, especially when it's a patient that's, like, in and out, especially when they're, like, end of life care or, they have cancer or just depending on what like, if you're in oncology, I could never work in oncology because oncology would just be so depressing because,
Yeah, for real.
you'd meet these people and you wouldn't know when, you know you wouldn't know when they would leave, and it's very sad and yeah, I wanna Sufyan? Yeah, Sufyan said, "It's mad how much you have to pay to live in America." Yeah, it's mad that we have to pay to stay alive, especially with healthcare. It's like it's not free. It might be given to you from your job. It might be given as from the government when you become old enough with Medicare. But like there have been people that have came into the ER and it sounds very terrible, but they needed help and they didn't have insurance or they might have been homeless or whatever, and we had to turn them away. Um, I mean, we try to help them to the best that we can without actually using any equipment, without using, anything. But like, if there has to be like surgical intervention or medication or whatever. You don't know, especially with homeless people. You don't they don't a lot of them don't have ID. A lot of them don't have any way to identify who they are. They can give us any name and date of birth, but like it's really hard. It's a very stressful job. I worked in emergency med for like a few months, and it was the worst. Like you didn't know what came in through the door. It was like that. You would one day someone would come in with a blade in their left shoulder. The next day someone would come in just gushing blood. You didn't know where the entrance. Some people would come in with gunshot wounds. You know what I'm saying? It was crazy. And it's so unpredictable, but I think that's why a lot of the emergency medicine physicians like it, is because they're always on their toes. They always have to stay on top of everything. Um, but yeah, I feel like at the end of the day, it's like no matter what field you go into, it's your heart at the end of the day. Like Luther said, like, you just don't talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Like you think about it. I mean, when someone dies on my care, I think about it. I still think about it. It could be, 5, 6 months ago. I still think about it. Thinking about what I could have done differently, thinking about, if there was anything I could have done differently. But that's the thing, man. Like you have to keep going. Just like it can be with death, it can be with life, it can be with anything. That's just the mantra you have to go on with, is, you know, just to keep going, because I mean, death is inevitable, gonna happen. I mean, some people say that's the only thing that's guaranteed in life, but that's the thing is, you know, you can sit and mourn for, a few minutes, a few days, but at some point, that sun's gonna come up and that it's gonna go down, the moon's gonna come up and the moon's gonna come down. Time is never gonna stop. And the
Mhm.
more that I'm not gonna say waste time, but the more that you use that time in mourning, just like Luther said, like, I guarantee you their loved ones wouldn't want them to mourn over them 24/7, right? That's just how it is. It's like they want them to live the best life that they can. You know what I'm saying? They want them to reach their potential and exceed that. They don't want them to just spend time day by day mourning them leaving the earth when, they could be putting that time towards things that their loved ones that had passed would want them to do.
Exactly, man.
Yeah, 100%, man. Of course, it's easier said than done. Like all things in life, but with this especially. Um, Trip, what do you have to say?
Yeah,
Anything to say?
I'm very pleased to, like, I never lost anyone. I just saw people die, that's it. So, we can go to you if you want.
I
Yeah,
didn't hear what you said.
SWAT in here, man. Hey, what's going on, bro?
I allowed requests because I think someone wanted to come on and speak. Um, his name is Seekness. He's a disciple.
Oh,
I
Seekness,
think
yeah.
I feel like we should add the lunatic. He lost his, his friend killed himself.
Seekness? Or
Seekness to that.
Lunatic. Well, let
Wait,
me talk about it.
that's lunatic. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay. Geez, I mean, lunatic. If you'd like to come up here and say a bit, you're more than welcome. Equally, don't feel pressured if you don't want to, because yeah, I probably should have put like a disclaimer in the title here. Sorry, guys. It's
oh
Yeah, like a
it's
trigger warning.
yeah, like a trigger warning.
yeah,
Yeah. Although it's oh hi, I fixed my mic by the way. How y'all doing? So
Oh.
good.
yeah,
I missed you, SWAT.
I miss me too.
I miss you too.
But
Dr. K.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So
it's
that
a deep topic. Yeah, fun.
it is, yeah. It's it is because so let me tell you what inspired me really to kind of, we're doing this in a sort of like roundabout way. What inspired me to come out with this lecture was because over the last, like, since I left the military, I think over the last like 6 months or so, when I've met people, and whether someone I know who was with me would say, oh hey, so Sravan's been in the military, or I said, yeah, there is, that's the video that's like directly linked to it. That was the question. That was the, I kind of like subconsciously tallied it up. That was the first question that came to people's minds when they heard, oh, oh, this guy was in the army. Oh, I wonder if he's killed someone. You know, and I found myself getting taken back every single time, almost like re-entering that sort of like hostile space, because that's my sort of like strategy with dealing with death. So so it's it's quite interesting because like in the military they teach us, especially when you're getting ready for combat deployments, to the way that they desensitize the medics from death, or the way that they try to, is we follow a stepwise algorithm on assessing our casualties as they go down in the battlefield. And irrespective, irrespective of whether that guy is your friend, someone that you've just met or whatever. I mean, also the simple fact that you're on the same team, it's like blue forces on the field, is we assess based off triage. But even when we check for a pulse, if they've got a pulse but they're not responsive, aka they're unconscious, we are told to treat them as if they are dead, and we treat the wounded who can either self-medicate or who need our assistance. For example, they're down and they're calling out to us, screaming, I need a medic, or they're just in pain, and we treat them. And then we go to the unconscious casualties afterwards, right? And one way that they sort of train us to desensitize to death is very similar to like what John talked about. Is they actually put us in situations where we deal with death a lot. I was sent to hospitals where we worked on cadavers. We do a lot of like live training, and we've even worked on pigs, like dead pigs, because fun fact, the anatomy of a pig is very, very similar to that of a human. And as a matter of fact, the DNA is almost replicable. It's almost identical. Sorry, that's the word. So, that's just one thing, that sort of helped me desensitize in a sense. Although the very human aspect does kick in, because like even now, I was just talking about that kid. It's the kid that gets me the most, right? So I've dealt with someone who's literally fallen out of the sky before. Right, I was for those of you who don't know like what I did exactly in the military, I was an airborne medic. So I supported the airborne forces while they were training for their exercises. And there's just one exercise that went horribly wrong in a drop zone med cover, where this guy's chute failed to open. He fell 400 feet in full fighting gear, and just fucking pancaked, like literally just splattered. Now this guy thankfully, miraculously, did not die. But this guy was inches away from death. And, the senior medical officer, when he was evacuated to hospital, did say, if it wasn't for this guy's body armor, this guy would have literally just like exploded like a water balloon. It was his body armor and his equipment that was keeping him together, because all his bones had shattered, bar his skull. So this guy had like major bleeding into his pelvis. And yeah, I mean, this guy was just fucked up. And I was there with my team leader at the time, and that was extremely traumatic. But it's also like through training. Now I understand that not everybody's going to have the opportunity. I mean, the majority of you guys here listening to this will not have the same level of training, unless you go and join the military, or go join the medical services, where you primarily are trained for this. But a lot of that was my training. But also, and this you take this with a pinch of salt if you want to, but this is also how I sort of like, from a human perspective, go through this. I just say, like, I'm the instrument, and whatever is meant to be will be. And that's not to take away, responsibility from the fact that if this patient does pass away on my watch, I mean, that's still going to hit me like a truck. But at the end of the day, it's like, you can only do so much, right? So if you're ever in a situation where you are instrumental in someone's survival, you can only do so much. There's only so much that modern medicine can do. It has come a long way since the Stone Age, but even then, if someone's going to give out and die, then there's not much you can do to that. So one thing I also use to deal with death, call it a coping strategy if you want to, is is understand that like I'm not God. I understand that um I am just doing my job, and this person is, like my patient, and sometimes, yeah, it's quite cold, but you have to really just view them as this is just another person, right? This is just another human being. You almost sort of deface them in a way. You don't look at them as a personality rather than just a person. I hope that makes sense. So that's one thing that that's another coping strategy that I use to deal with that. Along with I just do what I can within my capability and my scope of practice. Like John said, especially during the pandemic times, when one person would die, you also have to understand you've got a duty as a medic or a clinician. You have a duty to look after the needs of many, right? And especially like when it comes to like warfare scenarios, we are also taught that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And I suppose like once you say that more and more to yourself, you really start to understand and digest and really put into practice that ultimately just another organism, right? And it sounds very clinical, it sounds very cold, but it is the harsh reality of the situation. So yeah, those are my sort of points that I deal with. Sometimes it's not the best because I think there's one thing that you can't train for. It's the aftermath. It's the after report, and like even to this day, I mean, I've left the army now. I'm still trained as a medic, but I I still think back on those times where it's not so much about the people that I saved, which some medics do like to pride themselves on. But I personally think it's like any medic worth his mettle, and maybe this is just like the sensational aspect to myself coming through, but I think it's not so much about the people that you saved as opposed to the people that you didn't save. And that then just like drives me to want to do more and be more, because yeah, as I've said, I've seen a fair bit of death, both in and out of the military setting. So it is almost like a savior complex, but then how you deal with that is, as I said, you just remind yourself that you are just the instrument, and whether they're gonna go, they're gonna go. Because John, correct me if I'm mistaken, but especially when it comes to cardiac arrests, like don't some. It's like a ridiculously small number. Like I think it's like 8% of them actually return.
It
Was
just depends,
Yeah,
if it's a STEMI or an NSTEMI, but yeah, usually cardiac arrest that's caught before they actually, go into cardiac arrest, when they start having the chest tightness, chest pain, stable angina and stuff. Um, yeah, if it's caught early, they have a higher chance, somewhere between 60 and 80. But if they do have the heart attack, yeah, I think
yeah,
it's sub 15%. I think 10%.
yeah. So again, it's like for anyone who like watches like medical documentaries or shows or whatever, it's not like in the movies. It's definitely not like in the video games either. It's not like Battlefield, for example, where someone goes down in the field and they're like classified as dead. They've gone into cardiac arrest, right? And you just pull out some defibs, give them a few chest compressions in their back. Like that's not how it works at all. So just to sort of round that off, it's just about understanding the nature of what you're dealing with. Realize that it's a lot more intricate than what it seems, and ultimately, when speaking to just other people, before you even decide to, whether it's you that's broaching the subject or someone else is broaching it to you, hopefully they will have a sense of decency to be a little more um so what I'm looking for, thoughtful, and likewise for you yourselves, for those of you who've been sitting in this lecture. So yeah, I guess we can, I mean, Vic, Swat, if you guys please feel free to add to the lecture if you'd like, or we can go into like a little Q&A segment. If guys, are you happy to answer any questions based on today's topic? It's been pretty rough. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I guess it's
apologize.
just people sharing like personal experiences and shit. But I don't know. Is that what we're just gonna do? Like just give our like encounters with, but not ours like specifically, but just like experiences either through us or like other people like we knew or know or knew. Is that how we're gonna go about it? Like I could just give an example or tell a story or something like that.
Yeah, you could do. Or also,
Uh,
Jackie's just asked, how can I help those around me cope with death? So, I mean, if you've ever had to be the person who's been consoling someone who's been going through death, or offer bereavement to someone, like how would you advise?
mm, uh, I don't think I'm even fit to answer this. I'm not gonna lie, but
That's fair.
yeah,
That's perfectly fair.
yeah.
What
So
was the question? Sorry.
Question was, so if you're comfortable, first of all, if you're comfortable to talk about it, whether you've had your own experience, clashing with the Reaper, so to speak, whether you've had to give bereavement or any form of support to anybody who has also dealt with death, and what would you say?
Because I had like, yeah, I went through something like that.
Yeah.
So I'll not go into detail, but yeah, it's pretty shit. It's just a really shit thing to go through. It's one, if not one of the many things in life where you can try to explain to people how it feels, and it really doesn't do it much justice. So similar to some of you guys are in the medical field, you could read a stupid amount of books on like, oh, if someone is like inches from death and then you bring them back, like that feeling and like the stress that it puts on you, you can't, sure, you can try to word it out, but there's a few things that you can't really express unless you've gone through it. I guess when it comes to death in general, the 5 stages of grief, that is very, very, very as close as I can think of. Like when my dad passed away, I literally went through the 5 stages of grief without really thinking about it until afterwards, realizing that it was a really good depiction of the roller coaster of emotions that you would go through. But yeah, it's inevitable. Death and taxes. So like we will eventually go through this stuff, and it's better to be prepared for situations like that than to out of the blue it comes out and yeah, you get blindsided by it. So yeah.
Yeah.
and it
So
feels
go on.
kind of just like add something there. Like it feels like unrealistic, or like just unexpected. Like I remember like my best friend or well he was before he passed away, God rest his soul, but like this was back when I was like around 12 and I was in about go into secondary school or high school, and like this was just like the day after like I went to like the entrance exam and shit, and I was just like sitting at home, and then I get a DM from one of my friends, and then he just says, "Oh, did you know?" For the sake of just saying it, or for example, I'll just say that his name is John, and then I just got the DM, and then it's like he said, my one of my friends said, "John's dead," and I was like, "There's, are you joking or like you kidding me?" And then it's like, "No, John's dead. Like go onto like Facebook and like Instagram and stuff," and then I did, and then I just like saw all the news, and it was kind of crazy because I got to know the guy for he essentially became my best friend in the span of that like last year of what most people like call like elementary school or like primary school. So I just didn't expect it when like he died in an accident, and it was just hard to because that was like my first like ever like experience where like you hear from like your parents and stuff that people like in the family like died, but it just feels like so distant. But and it's someone you literally see like every single day that you go to school and stuff, and you go outside to like play with. It's just kind of weird, and it was probably the most like emotional I've ever been in my life when I like had to present at his funeral and stuff. It was just something like that I'll never forget, and like you just feel powerless, I guess, to against when it happens, because obviously you don't want something like that to happen, and like just you can remember all like the recent memories. It just feels like the day before that you were just having a nice conversation, you were messing around, and it was just all so innocent, but like in the blink of an eye it's just like you're just gone, and you can never talk to him ever again, or you can never have more have create more memories or have more experiences, and it's just something that felt like it stays with you for the rest of your life. Like I don't know if like anyone else here has had some, or most people like on speaking here on the stage have, but like the first time that you someone like who's close to you perishes or passes away, it's it's something surreal. It's the best way I can describe it. It doesn't feel like it's something like normal. Like it's just it snaps you back to like the reality of life in general. That like everything feels so monotonous in everyday life. Like you just go through, you have your fun, but when you're reminded that stuff like in life is not, it's all temporary, then you get that wake up call, and you get that reminder that you really shouldn't be taking even the smallest things for granted.
Yeah, that was beautifully put, man. Because yeah, it's like I'm always brought back to this memory, and I'm sure everyone else has at least heard this, at least once or a handful of times, whether it's like your parents or like a a parental figure or like an older sibling will tell you, life's too short. Life is too short, and it's true. Like witnessing death is is like the embodiment, ironically, of that. And yeah, you really should not be taking anything for granted. Although situation depends, right? We're all situational beings, but like one thing that I've come to realize also, and this, on a slightly, maybe on a slightly lighter note, when it comes to dealing with death specifically, is also the understanding that life is too short, and death is inevitable. I think somebody said this earlier in the lecture chat. I was kind of skimming through. They said part of the philosophy of Stoicism, if there's one aspect of Stoicism to take away, is the concept of memento mori, which is remember death. And it's like death is going to come. It's not something that we should fear specifically. I think it's just understand that we are mortal creatures, and so when it comes to living your life, live your life to the fullest capacity, because this is the way that I like to think about it. When I die, eventually one day when I do leave this earth, I like to think of myself almost as like kind of like I look at my life as though I'm living a movie, right? And I see this scenario of me kind of like sitting in the movies, watching like a highlight reel. I'm at the end credits, and whoever, like the maker, God, the universe, whatever, if you believe in a higher force, or if you just believe, like, I don't know, maybe I'm just sitting there with death, the Reaper's just sat there with his scythe. We're just like chilling, sharing a bucket of popcorn or something, right? And he asks me, so is there anything you would have done differently? And I think to myself, I want to live a life where I have no regrets. And so that just brings me back to this philosophy of wherever you are in life, whatever path you're choosing, just try and do the best to live your best life. Live a life where, from a spiritual point of view, if anything, don't like bring joy to other people's lives, right? This is also like Hamza talks about. He made a video. It's quite funny. We've all been making videos about death lately. He said like if he dies or when he dies, he wants he wants to leave a legacy behind. That is something we should all strive towards. Now, I know it's different for, say, someone who's like an infant who dies, right? But the way that I look at it in this way is life is a sequential series of events where we are constantly faced with obstacles and suffering, where we have to endure, right? So you think about it in this sense, right? And just like forgive me if I sound maybe a little cold. It's the earlier you die in life, the earlier you are liberated from the hardships and suffering, right? So sin action, I'm spiritual. So you could say like I sort of align myself with Buddhist teachings, Buddhist principles, but not not completely fully because I was a soldier. But this is the way that I look at it, right? It's the earlier you leave in life, your karma, whatever it is done. The contract is fulfilled. Therefore, there's no further need for you to stay on this earth plane, because this earth plane is like the sandbox in which we must fulfill our objectives, right? And we must continue to experience and endure and and suffer. And like, yes, we also have good moments, moments of euphoria and joy, but we live in a world of duality. Okay, and I know it's getting a bit spiritual here, but this is truly my belief system. We live in a world of duality where it's like the yin yang energies, the masculine, feminine, the good and the bad, the joyous and the sorrow. So I think personally, the quicker that you go, the more like rewarding your life really is. Because if you think about it, our happiest moments on earth was when we were children, when we had like not a care in the world. The biggest issue that we had was like what flavor ice cream we're gonna get, And like now we're all young adults in careers and dealing with so many other factors of life. So that's just one perspective that I'd like to
I feel like we've just
share.
it's just something that that we don't. It's not really about the age. It's
Yeah.
about we grow more aware. Obviously, as you grow older, you're becoming more aware of the things around you, and I think that we just become, since we don't know, as a child, you don't know what's not, it's not like you don't know what's right from wrong in everything, but it's more of a, you need a guidance, that's just how everything is. And unfortunately, with the way our society is built, you're being guided from school that you're meant to basically be a fucking slave, and just repeat those things. And I'm not saying just being like fully exonerated and just do what the fuck you want, what I mean? I'm talking about more of a, you go to school, and for the next, like, until you're a teenager, like 15, 16 years old, you're like, all right, cool, I'm shit at math, I'm shit at biology, I'm shit at all these like things that I'm not interested in. But let's say there's that one thing that you are interested in. Let's say you have a talent in like singing or drawing, whatever it is that you want to continue pursuing your life. That is not very highlighted, that is not very like emphasized in your life. And that's why we hate our life so much when we grow older, is because we are guided by basically an impossible system. You're just go to school and you're being bombarded by all these subjects, and you are eventually going to fail. I mean, like, not everyone has the same perfect circumstances. Like, you need literal perfect circumstances in order for you to actually pass all these subjects and have the highest grade in all of them. Because you don't do it, and because most of us don't fucking do it, what happens is that we just become weaker. You know, we just become like, oh, we shit, we're trash. You know, oh, we failed at this, we failed at that, and that's why, you know, when you're older, you feel like, oh man, I miss the days when I was young. I didn't have to care about this shit. The thing is, if it was the other way around, if we were just actually doing what we want to do when we were studying what we want to study from, you know, when we are growing as we grow as well, and then you know, and like emphasizing what we have talent in, because some people are really good at math, some people are really good at, I don't know, biology, or you know, memorizing, whatever it is that they're good at. It's just the fact that we, or the system that we live in, that's what makes us hate our life, you know. That's what makes us have such a big struggle in our lives. And I mean, it's understandable why it happens. You need the people who do the work. You need the people who, you know, struggle for other people to be on top, because if no one is willing to do the work at the end of the day, if everyone is just like doing what they want to do, and say there's like a lack of doctors in the world, then you know you're gonna need to force people to understand. Okay, we need a doctor here, so if you want to be a doctor, you have to do this, but you're gonna get paid more. So you know you're a slave to the idea that you're a failure if you're not doing the maximum level and everything. And the people who are most successful, you know, like Hamza, for example, in the server and the YouTube channel that he's made, you know, he diversed from the idea. You know, he diversed from the idea of, okay, you know, I'm gonna study and I'm gonna do this. He tried, you know, he tried studying business, he tried studying college and all that shit, but like it didn't go so well for him. So he realized that he is built to be an influencer. I mean, the guy is literally built to be an influencer. Not everyone can be like that, but people can train to be like that. You know, if you have interested, if you have the interest, and if you actually want it, and you actually need it to happen, and you believe in yourself, you will be able to achieve it. But if you just believe that, you know, I'm not able to do that, but I'm able to do something else, then focus on that instead. You know, it's just it's everyone's dream to be successful. I know. I mean, we diverge a little bit from the reality of death and how to cope with loss, but it's kind of the same thing. You just have to. You're living in the system where no one really emphasizes how important a person's life is. You know, they just emphasize, okay, you know, just move forward, move forward, move forward. And then when it happens, everyone's shocked, and you know, people are like, okay, what's happening? And then you have those people who are like fascinated by it. Then you have the people who actually care about, oh shit, someone just died. And in that case, that's when everyone just doesn't know what the fuck they want to do. And that's why people hate being adults. It's because no one's really being taught, okay, this is gonna happen, this is how it is. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like, it's a lot of fucking experiences in this fucking world.
Let me
I can't speak for everyone.
let
But
me let
yeah.
me let me speak on some things. The first thing that you were saying, Luther, the whole thing, the reason why people hate their lives, I think, believe that's why I'm not really active on it is social media, because social media gives you this fake facade of what life should be. Because they say if you don't live anything other than, you know, an extravagant life, you're not anybody, right? Like there's nothing wrong with having a
Mm.
normal life. There's nothing wrong with being a normal person doing the normal things, because again, like you said, not everyone is built to be an influencer or a professional athlete or a physician or whatever it may be. You know what I'm saying? Like people have to
Exactly.
understand that like social media has given this fake image of what people say. That's why I always say don't believe anything on social media. You know, believe, you know, only half believe nothing from what you see and only half of what you hear. You know what I'm saying? Because like that's just how it is. It's like we live in a time where people are can literally fake everything, right? Girls can put whatever filters or whatever they want. Guys can, you know, Photoshop abs or whatever it may be. I know this is kind of extreme, but what I'm saying is, like, that's just the way it is, right? That's just the life that we're in. Is this social media where everybody wants to be an influencer, everybody wants to make money from YouTube or you know TikTok or whatever it may be, right? Personally, like I had thought about doing it. You know, I've talked with people about you know maybe doing something with like you know my daily life or something like that. And I mean, it's just a lot of it's again, it's a lot of work. It's another full-time job on top of what I already do. So it's like you can't just take it lightly. You can't put 50% into something like you I believe that like people have many talents. Like you don't have to have just, you know, like you said, Hamza, you know, went to uni, he didn't, you know, really whatever studying business didn't enjoy it. But what I'm saying is, you know, that's the whole point of trial and error. Like you might go into something thinking that, you know, if you go in thinking that you're not gonna like it, you're probably not gonna like it. But if you come in with an open perspective, you know, I feel like, you know, you have to understand that, you know, more optimistic mindsets will give you more positive results, right? So for myself, it's like I hated school. I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. But then the realization is like so like I said in college, like a lot of people don't know, in college, like I used to sing, like I sang all over the country. I've sang at, a Yankees game. If you guys don't know who the Yankees are, it's a professional baseball team. I sang the national anthem at a Yankees game. Like I've done a lot with singing, and I didn't think I could sing until I was in college. So it's like you have to understand. It's like you have a lot of talents. Like you're on this earth, you have talents that you might not even know about, right? You just gotta, trial and error, right? Trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. And just like it is like this next lecture with studying, right? It's all about trial and error with death. You know what I'm saying? Like how you cope with death, it's trial and error. Are you gonna cry, 24/7? Are you gonna, you know, act like you don't, it doesn't bother you? Like it's trial and error. Everything in life is trial and error. You're gonna try it and you're gonna fail. It's not gonna work. And you're gonna try to learn from it and, find a way that does work. But I know a lot of people are asking me about how does it work, right? With heart attacks and stuff. I know this was a while back if you scroll up in lecture chat. Um, but yeah, like so just a heads up, guys, there's four different types of heart attacks. So I'm gonna teach you guys a little bit about heart attacks. Four different types of heart attacks. There's STEMIs and NSTEMIs. So STEMI stands for ST elevation myocardial infarction. NSTEMI stands for non-ST elevation myocardial infarction. So you weren't wrong. I think it was pizza pizza. With an ST elevation, so a STEMI, it's complete blockage of your coronary artery. So when that happens, when there is ever a STEMI, you get sent to the thing called the cath lab, which is a cardiac catheterization. We call it the cardiac cath or the cath lab. But yeah, so your doctor basically puts a very small, flexible like tube, or like we call it a catheter, into a blood vessel, usually like in the groin, the arm, or the neck, something where it can get to the heart. And then we'll thread it to all the way up into the aorta. And once the catheter is in there, that's when we start doing tests. And then basically we see how the arteries are, if blood's flowing in and out of the heart. And if there is something, then we do intervention. But again, intervention could be a lecture just all by itself, so I'm not going to get into that. But there are two different types of heart attacks that are even way more serious than STEMI and NSTEMI. STEMI is basically, you have blockage, complete blockage. NSTEMI means partially blocked or there's severely like reduced blood flow, right? NSTEMI is a little bit more common than STEMI, but there are two that you don't want. So there's a CAS, which is a coronary artery spasm. So basically, it's when the artery contracts or spasms like severely. And then there's the coronary artery dissection, which is a very rare type of heart attack, which basically means that there's a spontaneous tearing of the coronary artery wall. That's what usually leads to death when that happens, because it's really hard to just repair it right on the spot. But yeah, so if that answered your guys' question, let me know. If not, I can go more into it.
You know what? I think
That was
we
good.
should definitely have a medical. We should have like a medical lecture, something afterwards. But
Sure.
I mean, so yeah, like on this topic quickly, we're going back to death. Um, yeah. Once again, sorry guys, I should have put a trigger warning, but yeah, I just thought it was something that we could really benefit from. I saw there was like close to like 300 people or something that were interested in it, so definitely something that I think a lot of people can draw insight from. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of out of anything else to say at this point. So if you guys have anything else, please feel free to share. Otherwise, I'll cut it here and then I'll begin editing and put it on my channel. So yeah, so anyone who's being curious, this whole session has been recorded and it's going to be uh, put up on my YouTube channel. It's sk_levels. And yeah, I saw that my video on asking whether I've killed anybody has been dropped here a few times. So yeah, please go ahead and check that out, because at least from my perspective, from someone who's served in the armed forces, I know I'm not the only one when I say that it's extremely not just annoying, but it's almost like disrespectful when somebody says, asks me that question. It just takes me back there, and yeah, I don't know. Maybe it is like some form of post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't really like to identify with the labels, but there's some people who it really hits them like much harder. Okay. I'll give you guys a quick example. So in college, I had a lecturer who was a Royal Marine Commando, and I remember one of the girls in my class had asked him if he's killed anybody, and he just like he was the coolest guy ever. Like nothing could get to this guy. Literally, imagine a bunch of like hormonal 18-year-olds just firing their mouths off, and he's just cool as ice. He's just ice cold, man. Man's got ice in his veins. But then this fucking dumb bitch asked him, "Oh, so have you killed anyone, James?" And he was just like, "Why would you say that? Why would you say that?" And he just flipped the table and walked out. Literally went from 0 to 1,000 just like that, all because of that one question. And to anyone else, especially the ignorant, they'll say, "Oh, it was just a question. It was just words, guys." It's not. It really isn't, because it's words matter. That's like one of the bigger things. Words matter, so you have to just think before you speak. Think about what you're going to say, really mentally digest it, and then let the action of processing the words that are formulating in your mind come out of your mouth. Because once it's out there, you can't take it back. Exactly, the words hurt the most. I mean, everybody just think back to when they had their first breakup, or when their crush told them they weren't interested in them. Think about how you felt then. Now just try and take that and amplify by 1,000 when someone asks you, especially if you've been someone who's been on the giving end of, death. Essentially, you were instrumental. You will feel some things. Yeah, sorry, John, man, but it's just I guess the easiest way to link it to other people. But yeah, hang on, let me just answer a few questions that I got pinged on. What do I think about death in fiction? Yeah, so a lot of the time when death occurs in fiction, so like in books or like in movies and stuff like that, it's usually it's instrumental to a narrative, right? It's instrumental to whatever the book or the film is about. And I mean, I think actually more when it comes to reading books, because that engages a different part of the imagination, where you start to, the whole idea is so that you are living in the artist's or the author's or the director's sort of like shoes, right? He's basically painting this picture, or she's painting this picture for you to experience, right? And then kind of make that your own. So I think it is valid. There is morality to it, because there's also like depending on like the nature of the fictitious scenario, right? If it's something that's quite serious and hard hitting, then yes, 100%. What I was just alluding to was, in reality, when people ask ignorant questions and they just kind of like verbally diarrhea those thoughts out without like giving it a second of thought or care, that's when things can become problematic. Because it's almost like going to, say, like a rape victim and saying, "Hey, so what was it like being raped?" Just think about that. Like, how do you know what I mean? Like, how do you think exactly? You wouldn't ask that, would you? So why would you ask somebody who's potentially gone to war, someone who's served in the military, or even a police officer, or a medic, or a firefighter, or just anyone in general, really, and just be like, "Hey, man, so have you ever killed anyone?" Like, do you see how stupid that sounds? But yeah, sorry, bit of a rant there. What else? How can you control your anger?
You can.
Well,
Just go.
yeah. In this situation, I mean, it takes a shit ton of therapy, or self-taught breathing exercises, or just things that you've learned, like whatever you use to normally control your anger. But when something triggers you, something deeper is at work. You see, so that's something that I'm afraid you'll have to figure out on your own, because everybody's different. Everybody's got different triggers. But the tools are out there. You just got to figure out which ones work for you. And maybe this could be like a look forward to in the next lecture, which we'll talk about, like maybe techniques to help you deal with suppressing your anger or just bringing yourself back down from that. And yeah, man, what I think about psychedelics, I personally don't use them. Actually, no, tell a lie. So, well, maybe this is classed as a psychedelic for a while, especially when I first left the military to combat my to combat like depression. I guess I was going through a very depressive time. I use CBD oil drops, but then be very careful about that because there's like 100 different types of them out there on the market. So make sure you do your research. That's what I'd say. Whatever psychedelic you're thinking about using, definitely do your research because it's yeah, sometimes it can do more harm than good.
Pause the
So
move.
yeah, exactly. Or just hit the hooch and just let your depression carry you to a whole new height of euphoria. Who the fuck knows? Don't do that. Don't do that. But
Nah, drugs are bad. Don't do drugs for real. That can fuck up your life.
asterisk to the
Like,
people
you
who
don't wanna
served in
go.
the fields. Oh yeah, go on trip. Sorry, bro.
Yeah,
Say, say.
you don't wanna go in depth. You get addicted, yeah, then you buy drugs. Then you go in fucking debt, so then you fucked. Literally fucked. That's what people get in debt.
Yeah, yeah. So like honestly, guys, even if it seems like it gets a lot of it gets romanticized in like music and movies and stuff, and they say that it takes the pain away, it makes me feel better. It's only temporary. You'll just spike again. You'll crash again,
Yeah.
and it
And
just
also
gets
these
bad.
motherfuckers says they have like shit on money to throw and stupid shit. So obviously they're gonna use everything.
Okay. We'll take. I'll tell you what I'll do. So I'm gonna answer this last question. I'm gonna end the lecture. But if you guys want to stay on and then ask like questions about psychedelics and everything, just because time is ticking, and I'll need to edit this stuff, be feel free to ask your questions to the panel. I'm going to answer this last question. So Astris says, to the people who've served in fields where death happens frequently, does death ever get normal? Does it get more triggering or less triggering as time passes? Did death get less? Did death ever get less scary? John, you wanna say a bit on this?
Repeat that one more time. I'm eating fruit.
Oh, sorry, bro. So Astris says, to the people who've served in the fields where death happens frequently, does death ever get normal? And does it get more or less triggering as time passes? And then he also asks, did death ever get less scary?
um, for myself, I don't think it gets any easier. I think at least it's different with everyone. For myself, I get more numb to it. Um, you get more used to it. It just becomes such a part of your day, such a part of your routine that you're not so. I remember the first time I told you when it happened when I had to call it a TOD. I was I literally walked to the on-call room, took my mask off, and I started crying because I called someone's time of death. So it's a very hard thing to come to. Um, but I think the thing is, it kind of builds you who you it builds to who you are, right? Like it's very hard to have someone die on your watch or die in your hands or whatever it may be. And especially like I haven't actually been to war. I mean, of course I serve, but um, I haven't actually been to war. I couldn't even imagine what they go through. But for myself, it's like you have to go on to the next, and it's kind of like I know it sounds very cold to say like you know to just not have a heart and just keep going. But the thing is, I've learned that you need to choose who you get attached to, who you have feelings for. I mean, I definitely feel for every single person that I've ever given, medical care to, but you also have to remember that, you know, you can't spend so much time grieving for those types of people, because you're going to lose yourself, especially when you're in a field like this. If you're in the military, if you're in the medical field, you're going to lose yourself because, it is a very rigorous field to be in. And I wouldn't recommend going into it if you are that type of person. I mean, you can, but I'm telling you right now, just to be aware that it is a very depressing field. Depending on what type of medicine you go into, or depending on what type of branch of military you go into, you just have to know what you're getting yourself into. I think at the end of the day, doing what at the end of the day, doing what you want to do, making you happy, that's the first and foremost. But you have to understand that there are a lot of factors that can affect that, and especially if you're in a field like if you go into emergency medicine where all you're seeing is the unpredictable. I definitely think that if you have a weak immune system, first of all, and then a weak emotional and mental health, seeing people die, in front of you, can be very overwhelming, to a point where you might need to even take a step back. I've had to points where I've just had to take a step back, especially during COVID. Um, and I think that it doesn't get any easier. It just you tend to just, at least for myself, distance yourself away from it. Um, it's kind of like I'm going in, it's my job. If it happens, it happens. But it still hits me hard. Like at the end of the day, when I come home, I always think, what could I have done what could I have done? Maybe I could have saved them. You know, maybe I could have done something differently. To like help them or intervene, to a point where, they didn't have to, you know, pass away. But at the end of the day, man, you can't blame yourself for something that is inevitable. Death is inevitable. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I wanna add on to that. So there's a there's an expression that my section commander told me when we were in basic training. He said, "A round doesn't give a fuck about your feelings," and he was a combat medic as well. And that just goes to illustrate the point that you you when you're faced with death, when you're faced with a scenario like this that's just so much bigger than you, right? You can't. It's not to say that you won't, because we're human beings, we can't help it, but you cannot, in order to remain like, especially if you're in a field, specifically for us guys, right? Who you're talking about, Astris, um, who are in the medical field, you cannot afford to let your feelings lead. You have to put your professional head on, and you have to you, you have to be functional, and like I've written reports for a guy who's I wrote a report, sorry, for a guy who was like the same age as me when I was in. He was like 26. He killed himself. He shot himself while on guard, and I was looking through his medical reports, and just I had to basically do the whole write up um for the senior medical officer to then pass on to the coroner, because when a death takes place on military grounds, the medical staff there that's in charge of that base have to do a write up, send that off to like the local sort of medical like coroner, etc., and then they do their own like autopsy and everything. And I remember just looking through this guy's info, and I was like, this guy is like, he's my age. This could have been me, This was just this was a dude, like, had a family, probably had a girlfriend, had friends that cared about him, and just thought about, okay, yeah, so this is real. I think it's more surreal, if anything. Someone else asked, does it make you more apathetic? Yeah, you do, like, you do desensitize. So the more you are exposed to something, as human beings, we are born for resilience. The more you are exposed to something, um, you will develop a certain level of tolerance for it. The effect that it has on your nervous system, however, because that's the feelings that we get, which then triggers the emotional responses. That is something that you cannot, like, it's harder, right? It's harder to manage that. And it also like ties in directly to whether you're someone who's more empathetic, whether you're a lot more I guess they're even masculine or feminine in nature, because if you if you're very like masculine in nature, then you tend to just sort of accept hardship more, as opposed to like try and resist it, or you're more compliant with the fact that, yeah, this is my this is just part of life, right? And then it's also your own personal traumas that like that we gain and carry throughout life. So it all depends. It all depends on you as the individual, but definitely from when it's your job, when death is quite literally in your job description, it does like develop a certain level of numbness. Because I remember like there was a point where we were also like tallying up people who were catching COVID cases, and we were just looking at the list, and I even recognized a few people, and I was like, yeah, okay, that's another one. Just scratch it, chalk it up, statistic, feed it to Public Health England, so we then have an accurate number of our cases, and we can then look at informing the public better. But yeah, welcome back, Sufyan. But yeah, no, we're about to wrap it up now. So closing statements, any points from you, John, mate?
Yeah, I would say that, whatever you do in life, you have to realize that pain is a part of life, death is a part of life, and everyone has different types of coping mechanisms. Everyone has different ways to deal with things, and we could probably span off different lectures off of this one. But I would always say that no matter what, your loved ones would always want you to be the best that you can be, and they want you to be as successful as you know whatever your limit is. They want you to pass your threshold, and they want you to go above and beyond that. So I would say that take the time. You can mourn and cope with a loss, because death is a very hard thing to not only deal with, but accept. And I would just say, whatever it may be, um, everyone has different coping mechanisms. So whatever it may be, find what I know this sounds very dark, but just find what works for you. Um, but yeah, find what works for you, and latch to it.
Yeah. Trip, have you got anything you want to share, bro? Oh, yeah. Okay. SWAT?
No, I don't have anything good to leave off on. I don't know. Hug your parents, text your parents, tell them you love them, because yeah, life's a bitch. So yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Trip. Yeah. Just show some love for Trip, man. Really brave of him for stepping up and giving his 2 cents. And even for Luther, guys, just, show some love for him. Yeah, guys, I mean, that's it. Yeah, pretty much the closing statement. Just, all I'd say is just, if anything, memento mori. Remember that death is just part of the process. You will see other people die. You will experience, whether you don't see them, but you will experience death. And just remember that it's just part of life, right? Um, and however you cope with it, however you deal with it, rather, do what works for you. Definitely, one bit of advice I can give anyone is, do not suppress your emotions. Allow yourself to grieve. If you need to cry, cry. If you need to take a step back, take that step back. Because remember, ultimately, time is just going to continue ticking, and you yourself will need to re-engage and function as a human again, because death is just one part of life, and there are so many other things um, that are happening, right? There's so many other experiences. Death is just an experience. So yeah, you just continue with that as you need to. Okay, boys.
I was also gonna say one last. You can end it right now if you want. I was gonna say one last thing just for everyone in the comments
Go
about
ahead.
saying they needed. Um, as men, we are told to, hold in our emotions, but I promise you, it feels good to cry. I know what Jingle said, "Don't let others see you cry." I've let many others see you cry. You know what I'm saying? I've seen that didn't make sense. A lot of people have seen me cry, but it is a rare thing to see me cry. So
Yeah.
when it does happen, they know something's wrong. So definitely, it's okay to show your emotion, because a lot of times, you just need to make sure who you're sharing it with um, can be trusted. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to just give it to everybody. You want to make sure that you are expressing your emotions to those that care and love for you. And you have me, you have Starvin, you've got Trip, you've got a lot of people. You can text. I try to accept as many friend requests. I know sometimes they go crazy, but I try to accept as many friend requests as I can. If you guys have any questions, I know a lot of you guys want to become, neurosurgeons and, whatever it may be. I'm here to answer any questions you guys have. And so is Severin, about medical stuff. So cheers.
All right, boys. One last bit of advice. This has been quite a heavy topic. I apologize for the for the triggering if anyone got triggered. So my call to action now is everybody just get up, do some form of physical exercise. Go to the gym, do some push-ups, do some sit-ups, go for a run. Just do something to bring yourself out of this dense energy. Okay, I'm about to go and hit the gym now, and yeah, as soon as I finish drying my fucking eyes. So yeah, thanks guys. Um, love everyone who turned up. Appreciate it. Thanks for supporting the channel. Thanks for supporting the movement, and just keep what you're doing. Okay, guys. Remember, we win the war together, one battle at a time. All right. SK out.